Schopenhauer said that will is the engine of all existence. We are driven by needs and desires that never leave us in peace. Hunger forces us to eat. Fatigue pushes us to sleep. Desire makes us pursue pleasures, relationships, conquests, and in truth, we are never satisfied. So, as soon as we attend to one need, another arises immediately. We eat, but then we feel hungry again. We sleep, but we wake up tired. We conquer something we wanted, but later realize it wasn't enough. Life is an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, a race in which we never reach the finish line. Want a practical example? Close your eyes and hold your breath. Keep it. Hold it a little longer. Now, wait. What happens? The discomfort increases, the body starts to twist, and no matter how hard you try to resist, there comes a point when you simply can't take it anymore. The air enters forcibly, and you realize you never had a choice. This simple experiment demonstrates a brutal truth that Arthur Schopenhauer understood like few others. Our life is not guided by conscious choices, but by a blind and irrational force that moves us. In the end, we never have enough, and that is why dissatisfaction is constant. The will does not have a final goal, because there will always be discomfort, and we will always lack something. Contrary to what we often think, happiness is not a lasting state. It is not a place or a permanent mood. We oscillate between desire and boredom, trapped in a continuous movement that Schopenhauer called the pendulum of existence. Imagine a pendulum. On one side, we have desire, need, the pain of not having what we want. This is the state we spend most of our time in. We want more money, more recognition, more love. We are always in search of something, believing that by reaching that goal, we will finally be happy. But what happens when we get what we wanted? The pendulum moves to the other extreme. Boredom. What once seemed essential now becomes trivial. The conquest loses its charm, and soon a new desire arises, a new goal, starting the endless cycle. If desire is what moves us, pain is what gives meaning to happiness. It seems contradictory, right? But think about it. Pleasure only exists as relief from a previous suffering. Eating when you are hungry is a pleasure. Drinking water when you are thirsty is satisfying. Finding true love after years of loneliness seems like the best thing in the world. And here's the secret. Pleasure is intense only because it comes after lack. If we never felt hungry, eating wouldn't give us satisfaction. If we never felt tired, resting wouldn't have value. If we never felt lonely, the company of someone wouldn't seem special. This is the great irony of life. We need pain to feel pleasure. We need scarcity to appreciate abundance. We need suffering to value the small moments of happiness. But at the same time, we are incapable of accepting this. We spend our lives trying to eliminate pain without realizing that by doing so, we also eliminate the possibility of feeling true pleasure. We want security, comfort, and stability, but when we finally get all of that, we fall into boredom and look for new challenges. This explains why so many successful people who seemingly have everything still feel empty. The millionaire who has bought everything he wanted discovers that money does not bring the happiness he imagined. The famous artist, after conquering worldwide recognition, realizes that satisfaction is short-lived. The person who finally found the relationship of their dreams, over time, wonders if that was really what they wanted. The pendulum keeps swinging. Schopenhauer saw this dynamic in all areas of life. With each achievement, we feel euphoria, passion, excitement. But over time, novelty fades, routine sets in, And often, what was once an object of desire becomes a source of frustration or indifference. The movement of the pendulum happens again and again with all our goals. A professional may spend years fighting for a promotion, believing that when they get the job of their dreams, they will finally have peace and be happy. But when they get there, they realize that now they have new pressures, new responsibilities. Satisfaction lasts briefly, and soon the desire for something else arises. Similarly, someone may long for retirement, dreaming of the day they can rest. But when they finally retire, they find that inactivity brings an unexpected emptiness. The pendulum never stops. Does this mean happiness is impossible? Exactly. We will never be fully happy because what we call happiness is nothing more than a temporary relief from pain. What we call happiness is just a brief interval of peace between two frustrations. So, if we live believing we must search for happiness, what is the way out? Schopenhauer was not optimistic about it. For him, the only way to escape this cycle was to abandon desires and seek a state of contemplation and detachment. Art, for example, would be a temporary way of disconnecting from the need to always want more. When we immerse ourselves in a work of art, a painting, a musical piece, a great novel, for a few moments we can suspend the will and simply contemplate beauty without trying to possess it or use it for a practical end. In those moments, we experience a brief relief from this eternal restlessness. Another alternative would be compassion. By recognizing the suffering of others, we can alleviate a little of our own torment. Empathy allows us to step out, even if temporarily, of the prison of our own desires and find some meaning in solidarity. But, thinking about it, how many of us are really willing to give up our desires? Who can live without seeking pleasure, without holding on to dreams, without trying to escape boredom? The truth is that most of us will continue oscillating, trapped in the same mechanism that keeps us dissatisfied. The best alternative is to understand and accept the nature of this game. If we know that happiness is only an interval between two frustrations, we can stop searching for it as a permanent state and instead learn to value the small moments of relief. If we understand that we will never be fully satisfied, we can stop getting frustrated by it and instead of fighting the pendulum, learn to swing with it. Desire moves us and pain is inevitable. But instead of seeing pain as an enemy, we can see it as an essential part of the human experience. The problem has never been feeling like we lack something. The problem has always been believing that one day we won't lack anything. In the end, the greatest irony of life is that we spend time trying to escape from what defines us. We want peace, but we are restless by nature. We seek meaning, but we are trapped in an existence that gives us no guarantees. The pendulum never stops, and maybe the only thing we can really do is observe it with a cynical smile, knowing that no matter how much we try to deceive ourselves, the truth will remain relentless. You will never be satisfied, and you will never be in control. These words may sound discouraging, even unbearable, but they hide a fundamental truth about the nature of our existence. Throughout history, humanity has tried countless times to escape this reality, inventing myths, religions, ideologies, and philosophical systems that promise some form of redemption. But redemption does not come. The wheel keeps turning. We keep searching for meaning. We keep chasing illusions. We keep believing that at some point in the future we will find ultimate rest. However, Life is a constant back and forth between dissatisfaction and hope. We tell ourselves that everything will make sense when we achieve a certain goal, when we finish university, when we get that dream job, when we find the right person, when we have financial stability, when we start a family, when we travel the world, when we retire and can rest. But the truth, the harsh truth, is that after each of these achievements, only another series of unmet desires awaits us. The nature of desire is insatiable. Its function is not to give us peace, but to always push us forward, toward the next, toward the unattainable. This is where the concept of resignation comes in. But not a passive or defeatist resignation, but an active and conscious resignation, an acceptance of reality as it is, without embellishing or softening it. Schopenhauer, with his methodical pessimism, invited us to recognize that life is suffering, that desire is a perpetual chain, and that true freedom does not consist in conquering a dream, but in voluntarily renouncing the illusion that happiness is a final and permanent destination. But what does this renunciation really mean? It's not about abandoning all aspirations or falling into absolute apathy, but about understanding that we shouldn't emotionally tie ourselves to the idea that happiness depends on achieving specific goals. In other words, we must learn to appreciate the journey without obsessing over the destination. The problem is that society has taught us to believe that life is a series of stages we must complete, like levels in a video game, where each achievement brings us closer to the happy ending. But life is not a video game or a movie with a satisfying conclusion. Life simply is, and its movements are not guided by a narrative that leads us to a transcendental climax. There are no guarantees, no predetermined destiny, and the universe owes us nothing. This thought may seem terrifying, but it can also be liberating. If we accept that we will never have absolute control, then we can release the weight of anxiety that comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. If we understand that happiness is fleeting, we can stop clinging to it desperately. Instead of seeking happiness as a tangible object, we can learn to recognize and value the small moments of joy when they appear. A meaningful conversation, a beautiful sunset, an unexpected laugh, the feeling of rain on our skin. Throughout history, various philosophies have tried to approach this dilemma in different ways. Stoics taught us to accept with serenity what we cannot change, to find peace in indifference toward fate. Buddhism proposes detachment, the idea that suffering comes from resisting change and clinging to what is impermanent. But at the core, all these schools of thought agree on one essential point: suffering is inevitable, but our relationship with it determines how much power it has over us. Maybe the key isn't in searching for happiness, but in learning to live with dignity despite dissatisfaction. Maybe the answer isn't to eliminate suffering, but to learn to find meaning in it. Maybe true wisdom consists in observing the pendulum of existence without letting it drag us with it, in realizing that the fact that we will never be fully satisfied does not mean that life lacks value. Because in the end, the deepest paradox of life is that the desire that condemns us is also the one that drives us. And while we will never have absolute control, perhaps the act of understanding this truth will give us a different kind of freedom. The freedom to exist without the need to justify our existence.